My name is Vanessa Cole. I'm 34 years old. And 3 months ago, my husband brought another woman into my house, believing I was too broke and broken to stop him. Before I continue, subscribe to the channel and hit like if you enjoy emotional revenge stories with shocking endings. Because what happened to me still feels unreal. For almost 11 years, I believed my marriage was strong. Not perfect, not magical, but strong enough to survive hard times. I met Daniel when I was 23. Back then, he was charming, ambitious, and unbelievably attentive. He used to bring me coffee during my night shifts at the hospital while I finished my accounting certification courses. He'd sit beside me and whisper, "One day we're going to have the kind of life people envy." And honestly, for a while we did. After years of saving, we finally moved into a beautiful modern house outside the city. Huge windows, quiet neighborhood, marble kitchen countertops Daniel loved showing off to guests. Everyone thought we were successful. But what nobody knew was this. The house wasn't bought with Daniel's money. It was mine. Technically, it belonged to a trust created by my grandmother before she passed away. She had been wealthy, but secretive. She never liked Daniel much either. Before her death, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Never put a man's name on something he didn't help build." At the time, I thought she was paranoid. Now, I realized she was trying to protect me. The trust legally owned the house under my name only. Daniel never cared enough to ask questions because back then, he assumed everything I had automatically belonged to him anyway. And honestly, I let him believe that. Big mistake. Things changed after Daniel lost his marketing job last year. At first, I supported him completely. I paid bills, covered groceries, handled the mortgage-related taxes, even helped him launch a small consulting business from home. But unemployment changed him. The sweet man I married slowly disappeared. He became angry, bitter, distant. Every conversation turned into criticism. "You don't respect me anymore. You think you're smarter because you make money. You act like this house is yours." That last sentence always made me uncomfortable because technically it was, but I never said that aloud. I still loved him. Or maybe I loved the version of him I remembered. Then came the night everything shattered. It was a Thursday evening. I had just finished a brutal 12-hour shift auditing financial reports for a medical company. My head was pounding as I pulled into the driveway. But something felt strange immediately. There was a white Mercedes parked outside. I didn't recognize it. At first, I assumed Daniel had a client over. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the front door. And then I heard laughter. A woman's laughter. Inside my house. I froze. The closer I got, the clearer the voices became. Daniel was laughing too. Not nervous laughter. Comfortable laughter. Intimate laughter. My stomach twisted. I opened the door, slowly, and what I saw nearly stopped my heart. A tall blonde woman was standing in my kitchen, wearing one of my robes. My robe. She was holding a wine glass while Daniel stood beside her, smiling like nothing was wrong. For a second, nobody moved. Then Daniel sighed dramatically like I was the inconvenience. "Vanessa," he said calmly, "you're home early." Early? It was my home. I stared at the woman. She looked embarrassed for maybe half a second, then quickly recovered. Daniel walked toward me casually. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice. "We need to have an adult conversation." I felt numb. The woman awkwardly sipped her wine while standing beside the fruit bowl I bought in Italy during our anniversary trip. I looked at Daniel and whispered, "Who is she?" He rubbed his forehead impatiently. "Her name is Sabrina." Sabrina gave a tiny wave. I still remember that stupid little wave, like we were meeting at a neighborhood barbecue instead of the destruction of my marriage. Then Daniel said the sentence that changed everything. "She's been staying here for a few days." I thought I misheard him. A few days. Vanessa, don't start yelling. Don't start yelling? My entire body trembled. You brought another woman into my house. Daniel's face hardened immediately. Our house. The arrogance in his voice shocked me. Then Sabrina suddenly spoke. Daniel told me you two were basically separated. I looked directly at her. We are now. Daniel groaned dramatically. See, this is exactly why I couldn't talk to you anymore. Everything becomes emotional with you. Emotional. Right. Because apparently discovering your husband living with another woman in your own house was supposed to feel relaxing. I dropped my purse onto the floor. Get out. Daniel blinked. What? You heard me. Both of you. Get out. But instead of leaving, Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. Then he looked around the kitchen before saying something I will never forget for the rest of my life. You're not exactly in a position to throw anyone out, Vanessa. I stared at him silently. And then he added, You can barely afford this place without me. That was the moment something inside me changed. Because Daniel had no idea who truly owned the house. And he was about to find out the hard way. I stared at Daniel so long that his smug smile slowly started fading. For the first time that night, he looked slightly uncomfortable. Good. Because I was done crying, done begging, done acting like I needed permission to exist in my own life. Sabrina shifted awkwardly beside the kitchen island. She clearly expected me to explode or break down. Instead, I took a slow breath. Then I looked directly at Daniel and said, You really think this house belongs to you? He crossed his arms immediately. I'm not doing this tonight. No, I said calmly. We're absolutely doing this tonight. Daniel rolled his eyes dramatically before walking toward the living room like he owned the place. Sabrina followed him carefully, still wearing my robe. That stupid robe made my blood boil. I watched them sit on my couch while Daniel grabbed the TV remote. The arrogance was unbelievable. I stood there silently for a few seconds, trying to process how the man I spent 11 years loving had transformed into someone I barely recognized. Then Daniel looked up at me. Vanessa, can you stop standing there like a victim? It's exhausting. Victim. The word hit me harder than I expected, because for months, I actually had been acting like one, ignoring the disrespect, ignoring the lies, ignoring the late-night phone calls he suddenly took outside. Deep down, I think I already knew another woman existed. I just didn't want to admit it. Sabrina tucked her legs under herself on the couch and quietly asked, Maybe I should leave. But Daniel instantly shook his head. No, you're staying. Then he looked at me. If anyone needs space tonight, it's probably Vanessa. I almost laughed. The audacity was insane. You want me to leave my house? Daniel stood up fast now, clearly annoyed that I wasn't crying the way he expected. Stop saying my house, like you paid for everything yourself. I said nothing, because technically I did. Not only that, but Daniel had no idea how dangerous his assumptions were becoming. He thought my salary barely covered expenses. What he didn't know was that my grandmother's trust still controlled several investment accounts tied to the property. The house was protected legally, completely protected. And Daniel's name wasn't attached to any of it. Not the deed, not the trust, nothing. I kept warning myself not to reveal too much too early. But then Daniel walked over to Sabrina, wrapped his arm around her waist, and smiled right in front of me. That was the moment restraint disappeared. You should probably know something, I said quietly. Daniel sighed. What now? This house isn't yours. He smirked immediately. Here we go. No, I said. You really don't understand. Sabrina looked nervous now. Good. I walked toward the hallway cabinet and pulled out a thin black folder. Daniel frowned. What is that? I opened the folder carefully and removed several documents. Trust paperwork, property ownership records, legal filings. Then I placed them directly onto the coffee table. Daniel barely glanced at them before laughing again. You think paperwork scares me? It should. That got his attention. He picked up the top page, casually at first. Then his expression changed. Slowly, confusion. Then disbelief. Then panic. His eyes moved across the page again and again. What is this? The ownership records. Daniel looked up sharply. No. Yes. No, this has to be old. It's current. Sabrina sat upright immediately. I could literally see tension forming in her face. Daniel flipped through the pages faster now. His breathing changed, because for the first time all night, he realized he might not actually control the situation. This says the property belongs to the Cole Family Trust. It does. You're lying. There's my name right there. He checked again, and again. Then came the question I had been waiting for. Why isn't my name here? I stared directly into his eyes. Because my grandmother wasn't stupid. Silence. Heavy silence. Sabrina slowly stood from the couch. Daniel. But he ignored her completely. His ego was collapsing in real time. You hid this from me? I almost smiled. No, you never cared enough to ask. That one hurt him. I could tell. Daniel suddenly threw the papers onto the table, aggressively. This doesn't mean anything. It means legally you have no claim to this house. His face turned red instantly. That's impossible. We're married. Yes, I said calmly. And married people still sign legal documents. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Sabrina quietly asked the question that changed the entire atmosphere. Wait, does this mean we have to leave? Daniel snapped toward her immediately. Don't start. But Sabrina already looked terrified, because suddenly her confident little fantasy about moving into a luxury home with a successful man was falling apart. She looked around differently now, like the walls themselves had betrayed her. I folded my arms slowly. You both have 1 hour. Daniel stared at me. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious. You'd actually throw your husband out. I looked at Sabrina, then back at him. You stopped acting like my husband a long time ago. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice dangerously. You think this changes anything? Yes, I whispered. It changes everything. And that's when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Then his face went pale. Completely pale. I frowned. For the first time all night, Daniel looked scared. Daniel kept staring at his phone like the screen had suddenly turned into a bomb. His hand tightened around it. I noticed Sabrina immediately becoming nervous again. Who is it? She asked carefully. Daniel declined the call, so fast it looked suspicious. Too suspicious. Then he shoved the phone into his pocket and forced out a fake laugh. Nothing important. But I knew that tone. 11 years together teaches you when someone is lying. And Daniel was definitely lying. I crossed my arms. You should answer it. He glared at me instantly. Mind your business. I almost laughed at that. My business. I looked around the living room slowly. My house. My marriage. My husband cheating on me in front of my face. Then I pointed at his pocket. Everything here is my business. Sabrina looked deeply uncomfortable now. Honestly, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because no matter what Daniel told her, she still walked willingly into another woman's home wearing another woman's robe. That kind of disrespect doesn't happen accidentally. Daniel suddenly grabbed his car keys from the counter. I'm going for a drive. No, I said calmly. He froze. You don't get to walk away in the middle of this conversation. Daniel laughed bitterly. You think you can control me now because of some paperwork? No, I replied quietly. I think you're panicking because something else is going on. His jaw tightened immediately. Bingo. Sabrina noticed it too. She stepped closer to him. Daniel, what's happening? Nothing, he snapped. But the tension in the room exploded after that. because suddenly everyone realized there were secrets inside secrets, and Daniel was at the center of all of them. His phone rang again. This time Sabrina saw the caller ID before he turned the screen away. Her face changed instantly. "Who's Rebecca?" The room went silent. I blinked slowly. "Rebecca?" Daniel looked caught off guard for maybe half a second before recovering. "It's a client." Sabrina frowned. "At 10:30 at night." He hesitated. Tiny mistake. But it was enough. Because Sabrina suddenly looked at him the same way I had started looking at him months ago. Like she was finally seeing the real version of him. "You told me your clients only contacted you by email." Daniel's expression darkened. "Can we not do this right now?" Sabrina stepped back. "Oh my God." I watched the entire thing unfold quietly. And for the first time that night, I wasn't the most humiliated person in the room anymore. Daniel tried grabbing Sabrina's arm, but she pulled away instantly. "How many women are there?" "Don't be dramatic." That answer told us everything. Sabrina looked sick. Actually sick. "You told me your marriage was already dead." It basically was. "You said she treated you horribly." Daniel pointed at me aggressively. "She does." I almost laughed at how pathetic he sounded now. Because men like Daniel always rewrite history when they get caught. Suddenly, they're the victim. Suddenly, the loyal wife becomes cold or difficult. Meanwhile, they're sneaking around destroying everything. Sabrina shook her head slowly. "You said you loved me." Daniel ran both hands through his hair. "I do." My stomach turned hearing that word. Love. He used to say that to me every morning before work. Now, he recycled it between women like changing shirts. Sabrina grabbed her purse from the couch. "I'm leaving." Daniel's head snapped toward her. "What?" I said, "I'm leaving." "Don't overreact." Overreact. That word again. Men like Daniel always call consequences overreactions. Sabrina looked close to tears now. "You have another woman calling you at night while you're cheating on your wife with me." Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out, because there was no defense left. And honestly, watching him lose control felt strangely satisfying. But then everything changed. Daniel's phone rang again. Same caller. "Rebecca." This time I held my hand out. "Answer it." He stared at me. "No." Then put it on speaker. "Vanessa." Speaker. My voice was calm now. Ice cold. The kind of calm that scares people more than yelling. Daniel hesitated too long. So I grabbed the phone myself. "Vanessa," he shouted. Too late. I accepted the call. A woman's voice immediately exploded through the speaker. "Daniel, where the hell are you?" Silence. Pure silence. Then the woman continued. "The bank keeps calling me. They said if payment isn't made tomorrow morning, they're freezing everything." I frowned. Bank. Daniel lunged for the phone, but I stepped back. "Who is this?" I asked calmly. The woman went quiet. Then she answered carefully. "Who are you?" "I'm Daniel's wife." Sabrina covered her mouth, and the woman on the phone whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel looked like his entire world was collapsing. Good, because mine collapsed the second I walked through that front door. The woman on the call suddenly sounded furious. "You told me you were divorced." Sabrina let out a broken laugh beside me. The irony was unbelievable. One liar, two mistresses, and apparently financial problems too. I looked directly at Daniel. "What bank is she talking about?" Daniel stayed silent. "Huge mistake." Rebecca answered for him. "The business account." My stomach dropped slightly. "What business account?" And then Rebecca said the sentence that made my blood run cold. "The account connected to the consulting company." I froze, because I knew exactly what that meant. Months ago, Daniel begged me to help him launch his consulting business. I remembered signing a few startup documents quickly during work stress without reading every page carefully. At the time, I trusted him completely. Suddenly, Daniel looked terrified. Real terror. The kind people feel when a secret is seconds away from exploding. Slowly, very slowly, I looked him directly in the eyes. What did you do? Daniel looked trapped, like a man standing in the middle of a collapsing bridge with nowhere left to run. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Even Sabrina stayed frozen beside the couch. Finally, Daniel swallowed hard and said, "It's not what you think." I laughed quietly. That sentence. Every liar uses it right before the truth gets worse. I tightened my grip on the phone. Then explain. Rebecca's voice came through the speaker again. Daniel, who else is there? He ignored her completely. Bad decision. Because now I wanted every answer. Every single one. I stepped closer. What business account was she talking about? Daniel rubbed his forehead aggressively. The consulting company had cash flow problems. That doesn't answer my question. He looked exhausted now, cornered. Then he finally admitted it. I used your information to secure the credit line. The room went silent. I felt my heartbeat slow down. Not faster, slower, dangerously slower. Because real anger doesn't always explode immediately. Sometimes it becomes ice. What kind of credit line? Daniel hesitated again, then quietly said, $200,000. Sabrina gasped. I genuinely thought I misheard him. How much? It was temporary. Temporary. I almost smiled from disbelief. This man secretly used my financial identity while cheating on me in my own house. Unbelievable. You forged my approval? I didn't forge anything. Then why didn't you tell me? Daniel exploded suddenly. Because you control everything. There it was. The truth. Not guilt. Not shame. Resentment. He hated the fact that I was financially stable while he was failing. And instead of rebuilding himself, he tried stealing control from me. Rebecca interrupted again through the speaker. Daniel, the bank manager said legal action could happen if. He snatched the phone from my hand instantly and hung up. Too late. The damage was done. I stared at him carefully now, not like a wife looking at her husband, like a stranger assessing a threat. How long? What? How long have you been lying to me? Daniel looked away. That answer alone told me enough. Months. Maybe longer. Suddenly, dozens of memories started making sense. The secret of behavior. The unexplained expenses. The defensive attitude anytime finances came up. And worst of all, the missing jewelry. 3 months ago, my grandmother's diamond bracelet disappeared. Daniel told me I probably misplaced it during work stress. I searched the entire house for days. Now, I looked directly at him. Did you sell my bracelet too? His silence answered immediately. Sabrina whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel snapped toward her. Stop looking at me like that. But even she looked disgusted now, because cheating was one thing. Fraud was another. I walked slowly toward the dining table and sat down carefully. Oddly enough, I felt calm, almost too calm. That scared Daniel more than yelling ever could. You need to leave tonight, I said quietly. He laughed bitterly. You think you can destroy my entire life in one night? I looked up at him. You destroyed it yourself. Then I added, and tomorrow morning I'm calling my lawyer. That hit him hard. Real panic flashed across his face now. Vanessa, don't do that. Why not? Because this can still be fixed. Fixed? I almost couldn't believe the audacity. You brought women into my home. Woman, Sabrina corrected automatically. Daniel ignored her. You used my financial information without permission. I was trying to save the business. You stole from me. I was going to pay it back. The desperation in his voice grew louder with every sentence. Good, because now he finally understood something important. I wasn't weak anymore. And, for the first time in years, he couldn't manipulate me. Sabrina suddenly grabbed her purse fully. I'm seriously leaving now. Daniel looked furious. So, you're abandoning me too? She stared at him in disbelief. You literally have another woman calling about secret debt while living with your wife. He pointed toward me. She's twisting everything. I smiled coldly. No, Daniel. I'm uncovering everything. That sentence shut him up instantly. Sabrina moved toward the front door quickly. Before leaving, she paused beside me awkwardly. I didn't know. I looked at her for a long moment, then answered honestly, I believe you didn't know everything. Her eyes filled slightly with tears, because now she realized she was never special either, just another person Daniel used. She left quietly after that. The front door closed, and suddenly it was just me and him. 11 years of marriage standing in total silence. Daniel looked exhausted now, broken, but I couldn't save him anymore. Not after this. He sat down across from me, slowly. Then, for the first time that night, his voice softened. Vanessa, please. I hated that part of me still reacted to his sadness. I hated it because love doesn't disappear instantly, even after betrayal, especially after 11 years. But trust dies fast. And once it dies, everything else follows. Daniel leaned forward desperately. I made mistakes. Mistakes. I whispered. You cheated on me, stole from me, lied to multiple women, and risked my financial future. His eyes lowered. I know. No, I said quietly. You still don't. Then I stood up and walked toward the hallway closet. Daniel frowned. What are you doing? I grabbed a small locked metal box from the top shelf, a box I hadn't opened in years. Slowly, I returned to the table and unlocked it. Inside were old legal documents from my grandmother's trust. Daniel stared nervously. What is that? I removed one final envelope. The envelope my grandmother told me never to open unless my marriage completely collapsed. Back then, I thought she was being dramatic. Now, my hands trembled opening it. Inside was a signed letter and one final legal document. I started reading. Then my entire body went cold, because suddenly, this situation was far bigger than cheating. My hands started shaking as I reread the document. Once, twice, 3 times. Daniel stared at me nervously from across the table. What is it? I looked up slowly, and suddenly I understood why my grandmother never trusted him. Years ago, she already saw exactly what he was capable of. The document in my hands wasn't just part of the trust. It was evidence, legal evidence, signed and notarized, a protection clause. And according to that clause, if anyone attempted financial fraud using my identity while connected to marital assets or trust property, they could immediately lose access to everything connected to the household during the investigation. Everything: bank privileges, property access, shared financial protections. My grandmother had prepared for this exact situation before she even died. Daniel looked confused. What does that mean? I stared directly into his eyes. It means you picked the worst possible person to betray. His face slowly lost color. I picked up my phone calmly. Then I made one call. My name is Vanessa Cole. I told the operator. I need to speak to my attorney immediately. Daniel stood up fast. Vanessa, stop. I ignored him. Within minutes, my lawyer called back. And after hearing everything, his first sentence was, do not let him leave with any financial documents or electronic devices connected to the business. Daniel looked horrified. Are you serious right now? My lawyer continued speaking through the phone. Also, based on the trust protections, you have the legal right to remove him from the property immediately pending investigation. Daniel slammed his hand onto the table. This is insane. No, I said quietly. This is consequences. For the next hour, everything unraveled. Absolutely everything. Under pressure, Daniel finally admitted the truth. The consulting business was failing for months. He secretly opened lines of credit using my financial history to get approved faster. Then he used portions of that money funding expensive trips, luxury dinners, and gifts for multiple women while pretending to be successful, including Sabrina, including Rebecca, and apparently at least one more woman I never even learned the name of. Every lie collapsed one after another. I listened silently. No tears anymore. No screaming. Just exhaustion. 11 years. Destroyed by greed, ego, and dishonesty. Around 2 in the morning, my lawyer arrived at the house personally with emergency paperwork. Daniel looked completely defeated by then. He kept trying to talk to me, trying to explain, trying to apologize. But apologies sound meaningless once respect disappears. The hardest moment came when he quietly asked, "You really want to end our marriage like this?" I looked at him for a long time before answering. No. His eyes softened slightly. Then I finished my sentence. "You ended it the moment you stopped valuing me." Silence. Painful silence. My lawyer handed Daniel temporary removal documents while explaining the investigation process connected to the business accounts. Daniel looked humiliated. Good, because humiliation was exactly what he brought into my home. As he packed his things, I noticed something strange. He kept looking around the house emotionally. The kitchen, the stairs, the living room, almost like he finally realized what he lost. Not the money, not the luxury. Me, the woman who supported him when nobody else did. The woman who stayed loyal while he destroyed everything. Right before leaving, Daniel stopped at the front door, then quietly said, "I did love you." That one hurt more than I expected, because part of me believed him. I think he did love me once. But love without loyalty eventually becomes poison, and poison destroys everything it touches. I walked to the doorway slowly. Then I gave him the final truth he probably never expected. "You didn't lose me because you failed financially." Daniel looked up. "You lost me because you thought I would never leave." His eyes filled slightly with tears. But it was too late now. Far too late. A few seconds later, he walked out the front door carrying 2 suitcases and the ruins of his own choices. And just like that, the house became quiet again. For the first time in years, truly quiet. I stood there alone in the living room while the early morning sunlight slowly entered through the windows. And honestly, I expected to feel broken. Instead, I felt free. Not because divorce is easy, not because betrayal doesn't hurt, but because sometimes losing the wrong person is the first step toward getting yourself back. 3 months later, the investigation into the business fraud officially began. Daniel's consulting company collapsed completely. Multiple lawsuits followed. And according to mutual friends, Sabrina left him permanently after discovering even more lies. As for me, I stayed in the house. And why house? I renovated the kitchen, repainted the bedroom, started therapy, and slowly rebuilt a version of myself that no longer tolerated disrespect disguised as love. Because one thing I finally learned is this: the people who underestimate your kindness are always shocked when they finally meet your strength. And trust me,